It was 11:42 p.m. on a rainy Tuesday in Seattle, inside my restored Victorian home. The only light came from my drafting table. I was reviewing blueprints when a phone lit up on the granite counter. It was not mine. It was Maverick's. He had left it there when he went to take a shower. The screen flashed once. A single text message from Noelle. It read, "She's asleep. Staying at yours? Don't wait up." A second later, another bubble appeared. "Sorry, babe. Wrong chat. Work is crazy late." I stared at the screen. I did not cry. I did not scream. Instead, a cold clarity washed over me, sharp as a drafting knife. As a landscape architect, I know exactly what to do when I spot a structural flaw in a foundation. You do not patch it. You condemn it. The betrayal was not a tragedy, it was data. And I knew exactly how to handle it. Drop a comment and let me know where you are listening from right now. I would love to know who is part of our community. I sat in the silence of the house I had rebuilt from the studs up. I spent 2 years sanding original fur floors and hunting down period-correct molding. I built things to last. I looked around the kitchen at what Maverick had brought into this sanctuary. A half-empty energy drink can leaving a ring on my butcher block island. A stack of past due notices for his car insurance and credit cards. I had let him move in 8 months ago because I thought we were building a partnership. But looking at that text, the illusion dissolved. I wasn't building a partnership. I was subsidizing a parasite. I started to think back, replaying the last 2 years. The signs had always been there. The way he kept his phone face down. The late nights at the office that never resulted in a commission check. I had seen all of it. But I had chosen not to connect the dots. Psychologists call it cognitive dissonance. It is the mental discomfort you feel when your beliefs do not match your reality. I believed I was a smart, independent woman. But the reality was, I was dating a man who treated me like an option. To bridge that gap, my brain had been working overtime, manufacturing excuses. He is just stressed. I would tell myself, he needs his privacy. I realized then that I had not fallen in love with Maverick. I had fallen in love with his potential. I had looked at a man who was essentially a weed, invasive and shallow-rooted, and tried to prune him into a rosebush. But you cannot landscape a personality. The text from Noelle was proof that my project had failed. The soil was toxic. And there was only one way to fix a site this contaminated. You clear the lot. I looked at the clock. 11:55. He was still in the shower. I stood up. My movements were mechanical. I walked to the utility closet, pulled out a stack of heavy-duty cardboard boxes, and grabbed a roll of packing tape. The sound of the tape ripping off the roll was loud in the quiet kitchen. It sounded like a starting gun. I walked into the bedroom and stripped the bed, folding the duvet he claimed to love but never washed. I was not sentimental. I folded his pillow into a tight square and placed it at the bottom of the first box. Next came the closet. I pulled his hoodies off the hanger zip. Fold. Stack. His limited edition sneakers went into their original boxes. I wound the cords of his gaming headset, securing them with a twist tie. This was not a breakup. This was a demolition. I moved to the kitchen and unplugged the $3,000 espresso machine he had insisted we needed but never used. Into the box it went, along with his protein powders and novelty mugs. By 12:45, the house was purged. 12 boxes and 3 contractor bags sat by the back door. I carried them out to my truck one by one. The rain was soaking my shirt. But I didn't care. The physical exertion grounded me. Every box I lifted was a weight I was removing from my life. I started the truck and drove through the empty streets to Capitol Hill. I knew exactly where Noelle lived. I parked in front of her duplex and lowered the tailgate. I didn't knock. I simply unloaded the boxes onto her driveway. Right behind her sedan, the cardboard immediately began to darken with moisture. As I drove away, leaving his life dissolving in the rain, I didn't feel petty. I felt powerful. Silence is loud. It screams that you are not worth my words. By refusing to engage, by denying him the satisfaction of a fight, I was not just leaving him, I was erasing him. I got home at 1:30. The house felt lighter. I went to the toolbox, grabbed a screwdriver, and removed the old brass lock set. 10 minutes later, I had installed a heavy-duty electronic deadbolt. I punched in a new code. The sound of the bolt sliding home was the most satisfying thing I had heard in years. At 7 a.m., the sun struggled to break through the gray overcast. I stood in my kitchen, making coffee. For the first time in 8 months, I didn't have to worry about the noise of the grinder waking up a man who needed his rest. The piece lasted exactly 12 minutes. My phone started buzzing on the counter. A continuous, angry vibration. I looked at the screen. Maverick, you're psycho. The first text read, "My stuff is ruined." Who does that? I paid for half those clothes. He hadn't. I'm coming over. I didn't reply. I took my coffee to the living room and watched from the window. 10 minutes later, his car screeched into the driveway. He marched up the steps, entitlement radiating off him. He jammed his key into the lock, the old key. Scrape, jiggle, shove. He pulled the key out, looked at it, and jammed it back in. When it refused to turn, realization hit. He started pounding on the door. "Cora, open the damn door. I know you're in there." His voice was muffled by the double-paned glass. It sounded small. A week ago, that voice would have made me scramble. Now, it was just noise. I watched him kick the door once, leaving a muddy scuff mark on the white paint. When he realized the door wasn't opening, the siege moved online. My phone lit up with security alerts. Multiple failed login attempts on my iCloud. Password reset requests for my business email. He wasn't just mad, he was trying to burn down my livelihood. I sat down at my laptop calmly. I enabled two-factor authentication on everything. I called the bank and froze the joint account, transferring my funds to my personal savings. I watched the notifications pop up like flares from a sinking ship. He was flailing. Then came the enablers. At 8:30, a voicemail from his mother. "Rebecca. Cora, it is Rebecca. Maverick is distraught. You cannot just kick a tenant out without notice. That is an illegal eviction. He has rights. You need to let him back in. Or we will be contacting a lawyer. You are better than this." Illegal eviction. I almost laughed. They thought this was a landlord-tenant dispute. They didn't realize I had already won the game before they even knew the pieces were on the board. I watched Maverick wait in his car for 10 more minutes before he finally peeled out of the driveway. The siege had failed. By 10 a.m., the noise shifted. The text stopped. Maverick wasn't the type to retreat. He was the type to pivot. An email notification pinged. Subject: notice of intent to sue. It was addressed to me, copied to a generic law firm email address. The body was a masterpiece of legal jargon copied from the internet. Cora, per Washington state common law, I am notifying you of my claim to equitable interest in the property. I have contributed to the maintenance of the home listing, installation of smart bulbs, purchasing of shower curtain. As a de facto partner, I am entitled to equity. If you do not provide re-entry, I will file a lien against the deed. He thought the house was my vulnerability. He didn't know about the trust. 6 months ago, I had found a collections notice for his credit card with a balance of $15,000. I didn't confront him. Instead, I called my estate attorney. I transferred the deed of my house and my business assets into the Vance Living Trust. Legally, Cora Vance didn't own the house anymore. The trust did, and the trust had strict bylaws about occupancy. Maverick wasn't a tenant. He had never signed a lease or paid rent. He wasn't a common law husband because Washington doesn't recognize that. He was, legally speaking, a guest who had overstayed his welcome. He wasn't suing me. He was threatening a fortress designed to repel people like him. I forwarded his email to my lawyer for your information. No action needed. Then I dialed the one person who knew how much sweat equity I had poured into this house. August, I said when my brother answered. It is happening. He is threatening a lien. He is desperate. I am loading the truck. August said, I will be there in 20. August was a general contractor, built like a retaining wall. When he arrived, we walked the perimeter. "The front door is solid," he said, "but the side gate is weak. If he comes back, he will come through there." We spent the next hour reinforcing the cedar gate with a heavy-duty brace and a hardened steel lock. As August tested it, he asked, "He thinks he owns this place, doesn't he? He thinks because he hung a towel rack. He built the walls." I said, "Let him try." August said, leaning a sledgehammer against the porch. I went inside. The email threat sat unanswered. I knew Maverick. He fed on reaction. By giving him nothing, I was starving him. And a starving narcissist escalates. He would come for the physical assets, the vintage tub, the copper fixtures. He wasn't coming for me. He was coming to loot the temple. I sat in the living room, blinds drawn, waiting. At 2:15, the rumble of a heavy diesel engine shook the windows. A 26-foot moving truck backed up to the curb. Maverick jumped out, followed by 2 gym buddies carrying crowbars. They didn't look like movers, they looked like looters. They went straight for the side yard. I watched from the kitchen window. "Grab the tub first," Maverick shouted. Then the copper lights. Thud. The first blow of the crowbar hit the wood. I didn't flinch. I sent a single text to the group chat I had made that morning showtime. I unlocked the back patio doors and stepped out. I sat down in an Adirondack chair and waited. The gate groaned. The reinforced brace held for a moment, then splintered. The gate swung open. Maverick stepped through, a triumphant sneer on his face. "I told you I was coming back. Cora, you cannot lock me out of." He stopped. I was sitting there, calm, drinking iced tea, but I wasn't alone. Leaning against the pillar to my left was August, resting his hands on a 10-pound sledgehammer. And sitting to my right was Carson. Carson, my childhood friend. Carson, who was currently on duty, wearing his full police uniform. "Afternoon, gentlemen," Carson said, taking a sip of tea. "You boys know you are on private property." Maverick's friends froze. One dropped his crowbar. They looked from the uniform to the sledgehammer. "She stole my stuff," Maverick shouted. "I live here. I have rights." Carson stood up. "Actually, Maverick, we ran your plates. Expired registration. And we have you on security camera breaking and entering with a weapon. That is burglary in the first degree." "It is my house. I have seen the deed," Carson said. "It belongs to the Vance Trust. You are not a tenant. You are an intruder." Maverick looked at his friends, but they were already backing away. "It is my place," Maverick screamed. Lunging forward, August let the sledgehammer drop to the ground with a heavy thud. The vibration traveled through the pavers. It was a punctuation mark. "Don't." Carson stepped forward, unclipped his handcuffs, and spun Maverick around. Breaking a gate isn't a dispute. It is property damage and trespassing. As Carson led him away in cuffs, marching him past the home I had restored, Maverick looked back, terrified and confused. He thought he was the hero. He didn't realize that in my world, you don't get to break things you didn't build. The truck was gone. The neighborhood was quiet again. I stood in the center of my living room, the afternoon light pouring in. It was over. I walked to the entryway. There was a dark scuff mark where Maverick had kicked the door. It was the last evidence of his tantrum. I went to the garage and opened a can of paint. Sage green, a color I had picked out months ago, but never used because he hated it. I dipped the brush. The first stroke covered the mark completely. Thick, creamy color. I painted the whole wall. The rhythm was meditative. Dip, stroke, heal. I wasn't just covering a stain. I was reclaiming the territory. This is the justice of the sower. It is not about burning the enemy's field. It is about planting your own so thick that there is no room for weeds. Revenge isn't him in a jail cell. Revenge is me. Thriving. Revenge is the value of my property going up. Revenge is the quiet Sunday morning I am going to have tomorrow. In a house that is legally and spiritually mine. I realized then that I hadn't lost a partner. I had removed an invasive species. Tearing him down had been messy. But the structure underneath was solid. It was Victorian fir and stone. It could survive a man-child with credit card debt. I walked out to the back garden. I knelt in the dirt of my flower beds. The soil was rich and dark. I dug my hands in, feeling the cool earth. I had bulbs to plant for spring tulips, daffodils, things that would rise up when the sun came back. I used to think I was building a home for two, but looking at the house standing tall behind me, I realized the truth. I wasn't building a home for a family. I was building a fortress for myself, a place where I was the architect, the builder, and the queen, and it was impenetrable. Have you ever had to surgically remove someone from your life to save yourself? Tell me your story in the comments. I read every single one.